Okay, so today we're going to start on Daf Lamed Vav Amar Aleph. That's 36a. It starts with Va'idim Chaisman al Gavnei Tikkun Olam. I think it's what is that? 12 lines down, 11 lines down from the top. Can we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day, and the schus of our learning we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. Okay. Says that Va'idim Chaisman al Gavnei Tikkun Olam. One of the things that Rabbi Gamliel instituted was that witnesses should sign on a document. And he instituted this for the betterment of the world. Mara asks, if they took an oilam, this is because of the betterment of the world. This is just like a regular institution that the rabbis came up with. I see, this is not the rabbinical institution. It says this in the Torah that you need to have witnesses signing on documents. We even have a pasuk. It says, this is before the exile, the Babylonian exile. So the prophet Yirmiyahu tells the people that you're going to come back in 70 years. And as a support of that you're going to be back, you should even, when you buy properties now, you should get the documents and save them, because when you come back, those properties are going to be yours. So basically, but that's the historical part of this. But what it says in the pasuk is you should write it in a document and you should sign it. That means that you have witnesses signing in the documents. Amar Rabba, so Rabba says, Leitzricha, this is only necessary. We should probably read this. Loi, it's not necessary. Tzricha, it is necessary. You know, the case that we were thinking is not. Tzricha, it would only be necessary. Rabbi Lazar, according to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Lazar's view is that the document doesn't need signatures in the document. But the witnesses that are significant are the ones that observe the transfer of the document to the other person. That's the witnesses that are significant. The witnesses in the document itself, that's not necessary. Once a document is good, once there's a document, you don't need witnesses in the document. You just need the witnesses that can testify to the transfer of the document. So if you don't need witnesses in the document, according to Rebbe Lazar, right? So what do you have in the so what was the rabbi's institution? That they should sign in the document. The rabbis instituted that the witnesses should sign in the document. Which is the zimnin demaisi sadi. Sometimes the witnesses that watch the transfer will die, they'll pass away. Inami zimnin daslin minasiyam, or maybe they went on a trip, and then someone's going to contest to the sale or to whatever it is, and you don't have any support for the document. Someone's going to say that the document's a forgery. What are you going to do? So if you have witnesses that signed in the document, then it's going to help. Because the document is good without it. But in order to protect from possibilities of someone contesting the validity of the document, so we have them sign in the document. And this would be according to Rabbi Lazar, that holds that really the document is kosher without witnesses. We only have the witnesses are the living witnesses that can testify to what they witnessed, that there was a transfer of documents from hand to hand. That's the view of Rabbah. What was this institution? Now, there's a little bit of a problem with this Gemara because the Gemara quoted a pasuk. So it says, oh, it's following the view of Rabbi Lazar. And what does Rabbi Lazar do with the pasuk? I don't know. Yeah, the Gemara, this is like the Gemara can give an answer, but it didn't explain. It didn't explain how the question gets answered. Okay, so you minimized it now. So you've answered the pasuk for according to the other opinions, where you do need it to be signed in the document biblically. According to Rabbi Lazar, you don't. But how does Rabbi Lazar deal with the pasuk? Let me see if. Maybe Pasuk was giving you good advice because it's going to be 70 years later. You're not going to have the original witnesses that could testify to the transfer of document from hand to hand. So the good advice, we know. Good advice is good advice across the board. When did it become instituted, this good advice? That was Rabban Gamliel. So the pasuk is also, you have to say, the pasuk isn't telling me that this is how a document works. The pasuk is telling me the good advice that Rabban Gamliel acted on and said that this is how you should sign your documents. That's how we'll answer this. Rabbi Yosef Amar, Rabbi Yosef says, I feel Rabbi Meir. You could even say it's following Rabbi Meir. Now, Rabbi Meir's view is that the signatures in the document are the main part. It's very significant. You can even say it's Rabbi Meir. However, they instituted that you have to sign your name as your actual name, not just do a signature. Used to write, it's going to say in a second. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Originally, they would say, "Ani plaini chasamti yed." Now, I think what this means is that Ani plaini, usually, plaini is translated as so and so. I so and so sign the signature. What do they say over there? In the commentary, do they say that he would sign his name as so and so without actually putting in his name? Yeah, and do they have a little comment after that? Not in the bold. No, one second. But they did not state their full names. Therefore, the only way to identify them was to see an identical signature, a different document that ratified. Okay. I'm not sure if what the Gemara means is that they didn't say their name at all. They just said Pliny. People used to just sign. Or if what it means is that they didn't spell out who the father is, son of so-and-so. I'm not sure what the Gemara means by this. Originally, they would make a signature. You'll see in a second that it's, let's go a little further. Originally, they would write, Ani Pliny chasamti yed. I so-and-so have signed as a witness. Now, what do you have to do now? You have to go find a similar signature. If we have a similar signature that was on a different document, and on that document was brought to court, and the court had, notarized it, right? The court notarized that document. Why would they notarize the document? Because someone said, I don't trust it. So then they say, okay, so let's validate it. So they would have to validate that document. So if you have another document that's been validated with the same signature, then kosher, v'imlav, and if not, then it's puzzle. Amar Gamliel said, we have a big institution, that they have to actually spell out their name clearly and to make sure that we can recognize who this person is. So they would have to say their name and their father's name. Now, I want to go a drop further so you'll see possibly what's going on.
Today, a lot of times, the signature, and then underneath you have to write.
Yeah. Hill is pointing out that today, a lot of times you have to sign and then you have to write your name under it or somewhere. Write your name and then sign your name. So as you'll see, the Gemara says, "B'siman aloi," you actually need a signature with the name. It doesn't have to be a legible signature. Rav Tzayer Kavra. Rav, his signature was the shape of a fish. Yeah. Is Danielle here? No. I wonder if Daniel maybe would have an explanation for why Rav has a. There's an explanation there.
Yeah, so that both is just as today one night initial doesn't have to save time. You see it say marks in order. That's it. Write out one
Uh-huh. No, I'm just wondering why a fish. He could have done anything. Okay. Rab Chanina Tzayer Charusa. Rab Chanina made a picture of a palm branch. That would probably be a line with spikes going out, Rav Chisda Samach. Rav Chisda just made a Samach. Rav Hoshea Ayin. Hoshea made an I, or maybe the letter Ayin. That's a little bit unclear. But from context, it looks like he made a letter Ayin, because the Rav Chisda made a Samach. Yeah, but it doesn't have to mean that. Let me see if the ayin, in in the ancient Hebrew script, the ayin was different. The ayin was actually a circle. That's why, like an eye. Yeah. The funny thing is that our cursive Hebrew letters are more similar to the ancient script than the Ksav Ashuris, than the Sefer Torah. As the way we make an aleph, an aleph is sort of like this, like a circle with the line. That's the old Hebrew aleph. It was called Reish Tur, the head of an ox. Looked like something like that. Now but the cursive script is very similar to the ancient script. So the ayin, which is really a circle with but it doesn't end properly. It starts and goes up, but there's a circle there. That was actually the ancient script. In the Luches, it says that mem v'samach shabaluches p'nei hayomim. The mem, which was a circle letter, and the samach and the luchas was there miraculously because it went all the way through. So there was a little piece of stone that was hanging in the middle, in the center of it. That's what the Bavli says. Yerushalmi says it was an ayin. Machlekes if what script the luchas were carved in. Was it Ksav Ashuris or was it the other script? Anyway, he would make an ayin, a letter ayin. Rabba bar Rav Huna Tzayer Makusa. Rabba bar Rav Huna would make a mast on a boat, like a mast of a boat, like a sail. That's what he would. That was his signature. Probably looked like a number 4. The Chida was on a boat once, and someone forced him to write a document that was authorizing that was hechsher on some cheese, or some sort of cheese that wasn't kosher. And this guy said, if you don't write me a letter, like a hechsher for my cheese, I'm going to throw you overboard. Anyway, he wrote him a letter, and he wrote in it that it was Parshas Shalach or something. He says, "La Parshas." Their belts should be tied when they would eat from the Korban Pesach. It says they Masnechem Chagurim. The Parshas Masnechem Chagurim. Parshas Bayer B'Shalach. I forget. Masnechem Chagurim. Anyway, the rabbi said Masnechem Chagurim. What is when they came to the town and this fellow showed it to the rabbi, he wanted to sell his. So he looked in the Targum. Targum says Chatzeichen Yahayin Asirin. Now, chatzechen could mean belts, it could also mean cheese. So, and asirin could mean tied or could mean prohibited. So they looked into it, he saw it wasn't really kosher. But anyway, after that, the Chida would make his signature like the shape of a boat. Would have like a circle on there. Yeah, they put his signature. You see that they put his signature right on the bottom of this. That was his signature. Somehow that's supposed to be a boat of some sort. Anyway, looks of the Chida. Okay, he probably wrote close to 100 books. Anyway, so what are you saying? You have to spell out the signatures. The rabbis wouldn't spell out the signatures. They would just make these funny-looking initials that that were just symbols. Well, it says Shani Rabbanan, the rabbis are different. The B'ki and Simanayo, that everyone knew those symbols. They knew how to recognize it. They say, oh, it's a signature from Rabbi so and so. The Gemara says, but how did this all start? How did they know it before they knew it? Right? They had to. Where you're telling me that they knew it, but how did they learn that? It says, oh, they learned that the disc. They learned that when they were sending Shalos Yeshuvas letters of responsa or other letters of Rosh Hashanah greeting cards. So they would send it with that symbol. And then when they saw that symbol in another document, they knew who it was. So it didn't start off in documents. It started off with Rosh Hashanah greeting cards and other letters. And then from there it became the symbol of the name. Okay. So what we answered here was that the takana of signing the name in the document is either a takana according to Rabbi Lazar, who holds that you don't really need to do that, or it's a takana according to Rabbi Meir, who holds that you do need to do that, but you didn't have to sign your actual name. They instituted now that you have to actually sign your full name. Okay, now it says Hillel Hiskin Prusbel. Hillel instituted the Prusbel. Again, the Prusbel is the institution of allowing debts to be collected even after the Shemitah, and usually they're all absolved. Yeah. I think it was Solon. Was that Greek or Roman? I think it was Greek. Solon was Greek. Anyway, in his time, there were a lot of people that had a lot of debts, and in order to fix the economic situation, they absolved everyone of all their debts. So they're going to restart. That was what they did. Anyway, he was accused of borrowing a lot of money before he did this. He said, I actually didn't do it, but a lot of my friends did. Anyway, that was so anyway, the Shemitah comes, all debts are absolved, and that's not going to be good for encourage people to lend money, because if they're going to lose it when all the debts. So what they did was they have a little loophole where you're able to still collect those debts even though all the debts have been absolved. Still able to collect. That's why I'll lend you money and I'm not worried about losing it. So that was the Prusbel institution. Well, Tanan Hassam was taught Prusbel ain't a mashaman. The Prusbel, when there's a Prusbel, then the debt is not canceled. This is what Hillel. This is one of the things that Hillel the elder instituted. So the people were refraining from lending money one to another. Overall, they were violating a clear verse in the Torah. It says, be careful, lest it enter your heart this bad, what did you say?
Base
thought that you're not going to lend money. And Ahmad V'Hiskin Prusbel, he instituted the Prusbel. And what does the Prusbel say? The following. It says, Masrani lachem pleni dayanim, supposed to say, pleni dayanim shemakom pleni. I'm giving over to you, so and so and so and so, the judges of such and such a place, shekol chayv sheyeshli eitzel pleni, that any debt that I have by so and so, in other words, anything that so and so borrows me, actually like spelling out the person's name. Today we just do it general. Any debt that I have. Any debt that I have over here, it says by so and so, she'egveno, that I'll collect it, kozman she'etze, anytime I want. What he means is that I'll collect it on behalf of the Bezdin, and then I'll take it for myself. So I'll collect it on your behalf, and then I'll keep it.
He forgets the maker principle.
So 1 second, you'll see. And the judges would sign below it. It was an actual document. Oh yeah, Edom or witnesses. The Gemara says, what's going on over here? I have a Torah law that says that the person doesn't have to pay back.
Right.
Comes along Hillel and says, we're going to take the money anyway. Sounds like theft, right? According to the Torah, Ruvain, let's say Ruvain lends money to Shimon. Ruvain doesn't have to pay Shimon. Shimon doesn't have to pay Ruvain.
That's theft.
Shimon doesn't have to pay Reuven because the Torah cancels it. Torah cancels it. And comes along Hillel and says that Reuven can come and take the money anyway. So how does that work? Amar Abaya says B'shvius b'zman hazeh v'Rebbe. It's following the opinion of Rebbe, and we're talking about Shemitah nowadays, where Shemitah doesn't really cancel the debt. So it's only rabbinically that it cancels the debt. So came along the rabbis and said that for a rabbinic law of canceling the debt, the rabbis will reinstitute the debt. And it will be back on the biblical law where the person had to pay anyway, because there really wasn't the laws of Shemitah. How does this work? The Tanya, started in a brayso, Rebbe says, this is the matter of the Shemitah Shemite. It absolves the debt. There's two Shemitas. Shmitas karka, Shmitas ksafim. One is Shmitas karka. One is where the land is left fallow, where it's uncultivated. Another one is where the debts are absolved. Bisman shat mishamet karka, when you need to leave the land at the mishamet ksafim, then the debts are also absolved. Bisman shiyat mishamet karka, the time when you don't have to leave the land, you're allowed to work the land. Yat mishamet ksafim, then you don't have to absolve the debts. If you're not leaving the land, you don't have to absolve the debts. What's really going on over here is that during the time, there's actually Machlekes Rashi and Tosfos what's happening, but according to Rashi, during the time of the second base of Mikdash, most of the Jews were not in the land of Israel. Most of the Jews were in Bavel. They didn't all come back. It was only 42,360 that came back. And so the rest of the Jews were in Bavel. Now, in the rule of Yovel is that all the land returned to its original owner, right? The Yovel, the Jubilee, every 50 years. That only applies when most of Israel, all of Israel, or most of Israel is living in the land of Israel. But when most of the people of Israel are not living in the land of Israel, most of the Jewish people are not in the land, then the Yovel doesn't apply. So the land doesn't return. The land doesn't return, then the Shemitah also goes from a rabbinic level down goes from a biblical level down to a rabbinic law. So the Shemitah of not cultivating the land becomes only rabbinic, and not biblical. So if that's the case, so if you don't have the real Shemitah, then you don't have the law of the loans being canceled. So you don't have the laws of the loans being canceled. It's only being canceled rabbinic. The laws of Shemitah rabbinic, and the laws of not cultivating the land is rabbinic, and the laws of canceling the debts are rabbinic. So therefore, with Kinu Rabbanan the Teshamit, the rabbis instituted that we should remember the laws of Shemitah, and we should let we should keep both. We should not work the land, and we should also have the debts canceled. But then Hillel saw that people weren't lending. So Ahmed Vihiskin principle. So he instituted the principle. So the question was, how does Hillel change something that's a biblical law? The answer was that it was really a rabbinic law, and Hillel just changed the rabbinic law. That was Tosfos says that when the Gemara over here says Bisman shat mishamit karka, it doesn't mean that you don't work the land. It just says Bisman shat mishamit karka means at the time when the land goes back to its original owners, then you'll keep the laws of the debts being canceled. When the land doesn't go back. So in other words, it was really a yovel to Shemitah, not a Shemitah to Shemitah comparison. According to Rashi, it's a Shemitah to Shemitah comparison. If I'm allowed to work the land biblically, so then also the debts I can. Tosfos doesn't get into that, working the land. He says it's going straight from the yovel to the land returning to its owners, to the canceling of debts. Now the Gemara says, how does that work? What we just said was that biblically, the laws of Shemitah don't apply, right? Shimon Shimon has to pay Reuven back. Came along the rabbis and said that he doesn't. How did they do that? Before Hillel comes in and says, yes, he does. But how did the original? It was basically, we answered the question by making it into a rabbinic law, but that's the same question that you had a second ago on how does Hillel take off the biblical law? You said, well, no, it's really not a biblical law. It's only the rabbis. But then you have that same problem with. So, Amar Abaya explains Shevel Tasu. Have a question?
2 comments. I just shut this off. Sorry. The story with the belts, because I remember that, was Pasha's bow.
Pasha's bow.
And the hint why, when they got on land, that they bothered to look, maybe there's something strange going on here. At the top of the letter, the Rav, I forget his name, what he said, the Chida said, Pasha's bow, Yud Beis. No, Shmas, bow, Yud Beis. And apparently, I mean, it's redundant. You don't have to say Pasha's bow, because if it's Perach Yud Beis, Pasuk Yud Beis, you know right where it is. So that was unusual. So that was the hint to go look. They looked in the Onkelos, they saw Kachach Dochlun, Chatzechan Yohana Sever, or Yohana Sever, whatever. So because of that was the hint. The other thing is all these symbols remind me like of the original Kashrus, the OU, the OK, the Chaf K, it's like each, the palm tree, the this, that. They just looked, that was the original memes.
Dr. Stein is saying that those symbols that they were making were the original Kashrus agency symbols. The palm tree and the...
Well, reminds me of
it. The star K. Yeah. So Abaya says Shevel Tasa. Shevel Tasa. That means that originally the people had to pay back their debts. Biblically, they have to pay back the debts. Came along the rabbis and said, look, paying back a debt is a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah. You're supposed to pay back a debt. But it's a positive mitzvah. They say, sit and don't perform the positive mitzvah because of Shemitah. The rabbis can't tell you to violate a law. But the rabbis can tell you sort of like to postpone, to don't fulfill it. Shevel Tasa, it's to be still and don't perform. So that's what that's a way out of how the rabbis can take away the law that he has to pay back. They can say that no, you sit and don't pay back yet. It's a mitzvah, but hold off on the mitzvah. It's sort of like the rabbis telling us not to perform the mitzvah of lulav or shofar on Shabbos. How did the rabbis say that? You're supposed to blow the shofar on Shabbos. He says no. You may end up carrying the shofar in the street. We don't want you to perform it. That's a rabbinic institution. How did they do that? There's a mitzvah, biblical mitzvah. The answer is because Shevel Tasa. The rabbis can tell you that it's a positive mitzvah. Postpone. Just hold off on the performance of it. They don't tell you to violate a law, but they tell you to hold off from performing. And then we have another teretz here. Rav Amar, that was Abaya's teretz, was Shevel Tasa. Rav's teretz is Hefker, Bezdin, Hefker. When you're dealing with money, Bezdin can make it anything Hefker. They can change ownership from one to another. Amar Yitzchak Minayin Hefker, Bezdin, Hefker. How does this ownerless? Bezdin can make something ownerless. Eminent domain. How do we know this? This is by Ezra. They called everyone together. Whoever doesn't come is going to lose his property. They have control of the population, and they use the people's property to get that control. This is when he was gathering everyone. I think for they were married, the non-Jewish wives and all of that. He gathered everyone. Okay, Rabbi Lazar Amar, is it Rabbi Lazar? It's you have Rabbi Eliezer? I have Rabbi Eliezer, but on the side it says it has to be Rabbi Lazar. Elazar Amar Mehacha Elo Anachlas Shenachlu Elazar Akayan Yeshua ben Nun Rashi Avis V'Gomer. These are the inheritances that Elazar the Kayan is Aaron. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron, right? Elazar is the son of Aaron. He was the Kohen Gadol. And Yeshua ben Nun, and the heads of the fathers. Now, Chimanian Roshim Eitalavis. They were talking about after they conquered the lands and then they divided it. It says, why did you say heads of the fathers? You should have said heads of the tribes. Lay Malach, it's coming to tell you, just like fathers bequeath to their sons, Kol to whatever they want. Af Roshim, also the heads of the, which is referring to the Bezdin, Manchilim Ha'am, Kol they can also transfer ownership from one to another as they wish, which means that there's a power of that eminent domain that a Bezdin can transfer ownership. So that question that you had about how could the rabbis cancel loans, it's not a problem. They can cancel because they can switch ownership from one to another. They can come in and confiscate. They can confiscate. They can also say who it belongs to.
Is this the premise or how Winston was able to give, or whoever was able to give the swap their land?
That was actually, he went back and he asked God, how does it work? And he got a new halacha based on the law.
So God did it.
Yeah.
Just skip the base.
Yeah.
That
That
was
was
the
an
original
original.
Elohim.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I heard that there was daughters and there was another law that Hashem they took over because he wanted them to have to marry.
Yeah. What was the second one? Was maybe Pesach Sheni, maybe. The people asked for it and then they got the instructions. Okay, Ibailu.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is the idea of ownership also rabbinic? In other words, we went from, rabbinic with respect to the approval, now saying rabbinic with respect to ownership for call.
Yeah. So, Reb Shimon Shkop has a little essay on this.
Rabbi who?
Reb Shimon Shkop. You heard of Reb Shimon Shkop?
No, I
He was
haven't.
the Shiva in Grodno. He wrote a very important work. It's called Shari Yosher. Anyway, he has a little essay on this. If you find the Shari Yosher, it's in chapter 5. He has this essay about if ownership is because of a social contract, or if ownership is because the Torah says that you're not allowed to steal. Now, is ownership, the fact that I own something, is that because we have a social contract, we made that up amongst ourselves, and then comes the Torah and says you're not allowed to steal. But who said that you own it? I said, oh, that's a given because we've established that on our own, that I own it. I made it. I bought it, and then no one's allowed to steal it. Or is the basis of ownership based on the law that you're not allowed to steal? Everything is in the Torah. Everything is in the Torah. The Torah says you're not allowed to steal. That tells me that you own it. So the ownership is a Torah law. So he says, that's a funny thing. He says, how could you say that there's a law that precedes the Torah? That there's a social contract that precedes the Torah? How could you say that? He says, well, who told you to accept the Torah? We accepted the Torah. Mount Sinai. So it was our decision. So you see, there is something that preceded the Torah. It was our decision that we accepted the Torah. Yeah, anyway, Chassidus would not approve of this whole conversation. But Chassidus would say that, what do you mean? We have an neshama that's connected to Hashem, and there's everything is there. There's nothing without the Torah. The Torah creates the world, and whatever. Okay. Ibailahu.
So all private property is theft. How do you feel about that?
Well, private property.
Which it doesn't belong to you. Somehow you got it. You own it. You own the factory in which that was based. So you stole it from the workers that really own it.
No, the question is the ownership. What is ownership? Is it a Torah law or is it a common law? Right. And then the Torah says laws about theft. based on ownership. But what is the ownership? That's the question.
Where do we get that law from?
Yeah, where do, it's not. It's a like an axiom. Where do we get this concept of ownership? Where does that come from? Is that a Torah law or is that a common law? And then the Torah would come and tell me about laws based on the common law that which is a very interesting concept.
So Hasidus doesn't take this.
I don't
view
think
at all.
the Chassidus would. I haven't seen anyone writing about it, but I would assume that the Chassidus would say everything is Torah. Okay. Iboilo, they have a question. Ki Hiskin Hillel Pruspa Ledari Uditakin Idilma Ledari Almanami Takin. When Hillel instituted the Pruspa, did he institute it for himself, for his own generation, or did he institute it for all generations? The Mainaf Kamina, what's the difference? If we want to abolish it, why would we want to abolish it? Well, let's see. If you say that he instituted for his own generation, then we could abolish it. But if he instituted it for all generations, we can't abolish it because you would need to be greater than the first Bezdin in wisdom and in size. Now, why would we want to abolish it?
The first answer doesn't make sense. If he did it for his generation alone, there is no need to abolish it for the next generation because it never applied to any other generation. So you have to say that. The second answer I understand, all generations.
Right.
First one.
I think that we would still keep it until it's abolished. He instituted it.
But then he did institute for his generation.
Right. It's a good question. Dr. Stein has a question. Saying if he instituted for his generation, then the Gemara says that if another generation comes up and wants to abolish it, they can, because it was only instituted for his generation. He's asking, why do they need to abolish it if it was only instituted for his generation? It's over. It must be that we would still keep it as a minhag, but we can stop it because it was really only instituted for that time. Yeah, so why would we want to abolish it? We would abolish it because the whole institute of Prusbul is to encourage people to lend money, and because they don't want to lose their money. So Hill instituted a Prusbul where you could still collect. But let's say people are lending money even without a Prusbul. So then we see people are so good, they're lending money. They hope that they get it back, but if not, they're okay if it gets absolved. If that would be the common practice, then we don't need the Prusbul. We could just stop it. We don't need the Prusbul if that would be the common practice. So we could theoretically abolish it if it wasn't instituted for all generations. And for
similar generations.
Similar.
They were in the same position. But if it gets notified on its own, when the generation that was.
Oh, yeah, he's quoting to me in the Quran. They quote Rabbeinu Kraskas that it would be nullified on its own. That would answer your question. It would get nullified on its own. You follow?
But it still, I'm also reading here in the article, but it still applies if the same situation arises.
Okay.
In the halakha, this in Kushan Mishpat, in this section, it's either the Taz or the Sma who describes that Hillel really wasn't doing anything new at the time, because people already could make application to Beis Din. There were already things people were doing. He was essentially making it much easier and publicizing it.
We'll see how it works. So yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, so the Gemara leaves this as a question. We don't know how it was instituted. Tashema, So come and listen. The only time you can make a prusbal is either in the Bezdin in Surah, which was the Bezdin of Rav, or in Bezdin of Nardoi, which Shmuel would be saying is my Bezdin. You only have those two options. If you would say that Hillel instituted prusbal for all generations, it should also be in other Bezdin. Now, what does this mean? If it's written only, if it was made only for his generation, so you can still do it in these two very important courts. But if it wasn't, but not in other courts, if it was made for all generations, then you should be allowed to do it in all courts. Gemara says, how do you know that that's how it's working here? There's a lot of assumptions that were just made in that little statement. Dilma, maybe, Kitik and Hillel Adari Alma, when did Hillel institute it for all generations? Maybe even when he instituted it for all generations, it was only instituted in the important Bezdin. Yeah, this was like a huge assumption that was just made in order to prove something. So Avalakuli Almalai, but maybe even the original institution was never made for small Bati Dinim. Rav Ami and Rav Asi was a very important Bezdin. So now we have to prove it again. Damar Shmuel says, Prusbala Ulbana de Dainihu. Shmuel said that a prusbal is a Ulbana de Daini, which I think means the shame of the judges. If I had the strength of Atlino, I would nullify it. Of Atlino, what do you mean I would nullify it? You're not allowed to nullify it. You're not greater than Hillel Azakin. Hachi Kamar. This is what it means. What he means is, if I had the strength more than Hillel, that's what he said. It's exactly what he said. That if I had the strength to nullify it, I would, but I don't. So exactly the Gemara's question is exactly what he was saying. He was saying that if I would have had the strength, I would have, but because I don't have the strength, because I'm not greater than Hillel, then I can't nullify it. Now, Rav Nachman says, Akaimena, I would establish it. Gemara has challenges of Nachman. Akaimena, you would establish it. We don't need you to establish it, it's established. What he means to say is, I would add something to it that even though it's not said explicitly, but I would say that even someone that didn't make a prusbal, it's as if he made the prusbal. That was what you were saying. Let's say someone forgot. Okay, how did we answer the question there? We had a question. We're trying to answer it by Shmuel saying that he could nullify it. He would theoretically nullify it. That would mean that it was only instituted for Hillel's generation. And we said that, what do you mean? Maybe it was instituted for all generations. And he said, yeah, that's what he means, that it was instituted for all generations and he can't nullify it. Okay. Iboilo, they have a question. Hi, Ulbana, listen to the chutzpahu, and listen to nichusu. I translated Ulbana that it's the shame of the Bezdin, of the judges. But the Gemara is not sure. The Gemara says, doesn't mean chutzpah, doesn't mean the relaxation. What would happen is, if Shemitah absolved all the debts, then right before Shemitah, there would be this mad rush to get your money back. And the Bezdin would have to go into properties and start extracting money to be able to get everyone's money back before the Shemitah comes. So they made a prusbal. No, you can still collect after Shemitah. There's no reason to rush. It sounds like a problem, for the banking systems. And everyone runs all at once to get their money. It's pretty scary. I think there's like people before hurricanes and stuff, they run to get cash. I think they're afraid that things are gonna. Is that what people do? Oh yeah, yeah.
Like this
And in 2000, everyone was afraid that it was, what was that called? It was called
Y2K.
Y2K. Everyone was worried about that. So to avoid that issue, so they said, no, you'll still be able to collect later. So that would be that ulbana dedaini means that it's a relaxation for them. Tashima. So let's hear what it means. Damar Ula says, aluva, it's a shameful, a kala shazinsa bekerev chupasa, a bride that commits adultery while she's still in the under the chuppah. Amarav, this is actually referring, it's a mashal, it's referring to the Jewish people that just received the Torah and they're already sinning with the golden calf. Amarav Mari Reid Bas Shmuel, Rav Mari, the son of Shmuel's daughter. Shmuel's daughter was raped, and she ended up marrying the rapist, Isser. Well, she was taken captive. She was taken captive. His name was Isser Giura. He became a ger afterwards. And anyway, yeah, Rav Mari was their child. So that's why it doesn't use the father's name, it uses the mother's name. It doesn't tell us the mother's name either. It says the son of the daughter of Shmuel. It's Mikra. What's the pasuk with this? It says Achema Melech b'Mesibai Nerdinas and Reichad. Even while the king is in his party, the nerd, which is one of the spices, spikenard, has already given off all its scent. It's already finished. Amar Rava says that's not so negative because Adayin Chavivusa Gaban. The Eibers is still showing his love for us. We're talking about that, how we sinned by the golden calf. It says the Ksiv Nasan V'Leiksiv Esriach. It says it's given off all its scent, but it doesn't say that it went sour, that it went and it's giving off a bad smell. Okay, Taner Rabbanan was taught in a brayso and love and vain and all of them, the people that are insulted but they don't insult back. Shemin Charpasan Veimin Meshiv, they hear their shame and they don't respond. Oisem Yava V'Smechim B'Yisurim. They serve Hashem out of love and they rejoice even in their own suffering. Aleim Akasav Omer. Regarding them, the pasuk says, those that love him will shine like the sun that goes out with its might. Okay, now the Gemara says, my prusbal. Okay, let's leave by my prusbal. We'll leave it over there. Actually, let me just go to the top of Lamed Zayin. My prusbal, what is prusbal? Amar Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda says, price, it's an institution of buli ubuti, which is from the wealthy and from the poor. Buli, it's an institution for the wealthy. Elo Ashirim. We're asking, what is the name prus bull? Bull. What is that? It comes from the word wealthy. It's an institution for the wealthy that lend money. They should be able to collect it. So, what is bull? How do you see that? Well, it says, well, I'll break your strength. That's referring to the wealthy people. Rav Yosef says the targum would be bulois. Rav Yosef always tells us targum. Buti elo aniyim. Somehow we're getting out of prusbal, we're getting the word booty. This is aniyim d'ksiv habi tabitano, that you should surely lend him. Amalei Rava leuza. Rava said to someone that spoke French, I don't know, some other language. My prusbal, what does prusbal mean? Amalei said pursa de milsa. That means that it's an institution. It's just an institution. Okay, let's leave it over here. Have a good Shabbos, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. Shukr.
Any volunteer for Sunday?
I'm leaving Teretz Yisrael, so
Maybe Dr. Stein, will you do Sunday?
Yeah, no,
My son is in New York.
Yeah. So what are we doing?
Lamed Zayin.
Lamed Zayin.
From Rav Yehuda.
Okay.
If you can do Lamed Zayin and Lamed Ches, that's even better. We try to do it too Sunday. You know,
I'll go as far as I
you
can.
know where the barber that gave the rabbi the free haircut?
And then he sent
He
him
sent him another-
I have the same with the doctor.
Okay. Okay. Have a good Shabbos, everyone. I'm Rashi. Beard?
Haircut.
Oh, well, he gave the barber gave the priest the haircut. So he said, "You're a clergy. I'm not going to charge you." So the next day, there were some flowers by the barber shop from the priest, to thank him. And there was another priest. Anyway, they came to the rabbi. So It was, he said, "You're clergy, I'm not going to charge you." The next day, there were 10 rabbis outside the. Okay.